Dear listeners of the Female Guides Requested podcast, happy Wednesday. I'm your host, Ting Ting. I'm currently working and playing in the Pacific Northwest, escaping the heat of Las Vegas. Early this year, I finally caught up with Amy Shore from Fifth Class Climbing, based in Bishop, California, and I'm very excited to share our conversations with you. Amy grew up in North Dakota and spent her young adult years traveling the world while pursuing her college degrees in international studies. After finding climbing at the age of 21, it became her life's passion and has been a main focus of her life for almost 2 decades. Bouldering, sport and track climbing, establishing big wall first ascents in the Sierra and Patagonia, guiding 14,000-foot peaks, Amy loves the vast array of disciplines that climbing allows one to pursue. Establishing Fifth Class Climbing School in 2016 allowed her the freedom to guide what really inspired her, which was not big mountain objectives, but rather women's events and courses that focus on teaching women to be independent climbers. In 2021, Amy became the lead safety manager for a National Geographic TV show, combining guiding with rigging and logistics, and traveling the world to do it. Most recently, Amy became a mom and now has a 20-month-old son. She still runs and guides for Fifth Class and is currently most interested in a new pursuit, projecting sport climbs. The day after our interview, Amy sent her first 513. Amy, welcome to the Female Guides Request podcast. I heard from various sources about you. I know that you right now is the owner of the Fifth Class Climbing School and Guide Service. Can you just use your words to just do a little self-intro for the audience?
So I am Amy Shore. I recently got married. I was Amy Neff prior to last year. I own Fifth Class Climbing School and Guide Service in Bishop, California. We previously were Whitney Base Camp and Climbing School based out of Lone Pine. But about 5 years ago, I moved up to Bishop and started getting some permits outside of just the Lone Pine zone, such as Joshua Tree, Kings Canyon, Sequoia, and then Inyo National Forest up from Lone Pine all the way up to Lee Vining. Yeah, just kind of took some input from some of my friends that are also guides, a lot of female guides, and came up with Fifth Class Climbing School so that we could kind of incorporate more areas than just the one Whitney zone. I've been guiding since I was 26, so about 13 years. I've also done a lot of rigging work for television and commercial shows. Most recently, I was the lead safety coordinator for Running Wild with Bear Grylls. And yeah, just love to be outside, love climbing and playing with ropes and do it for fun and do it for work.
Nice. And when you say that the limited areas in the Whitney zone, so what do you mean? So what did you have at that time?
So prior to Fifth Class, I was predominantly working by myself, mostly just doing private guiding, and then had permits for the Alabama Hills, and I had the Inyo National Forest permit, but I pretty much just operated out of the Whitney portal, and then did a couple backpacking trips like for Langley or the backside of Whitney. So yeah, so kind of changing our branding was based off of kind of changing what we offer and where we go.
So you say you're pretty much private guiding, and so you were kind of like a one-person business kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, if I had multiple clients, over 6 clients wanting to go go climbing, I would hire somebody else to join me. Or if I was unavailable, I would hire another guide. But for the first several years, it was kind of just me.
Have you ever worked for other guide service?
Yes, I used to work for a guide service out of Bishop, mostly doing mountaineering. Um, I don't know how many times I've been up the Mountaineers out of Mount Whitney. Too many to
Mhm.
try to remember. Uh, and that was actually kind of the inspiration for me starting my own guide service was that I just wanted to do more rock climbing work. I
I,
felt like a lot of my clients were between the ages of about 50 and 65, mostly men, wanting to get to the top of 14,000-foot peaks. And I kind of got sick of that quickly and wanted to expand to working with more women, working with younger people, working with people who wanted to learn how to do it themselves, not just pay me to get them up a mountain. Even just the little things like learning how to set up a tent or how to filter water or how to actually tie into the rope rather than just being handed a carabiner to clip into. I was missing the instructional aspect of guiding.
it seems like your passion lies at you want to educate, right? So education, and you want to help people to be self-sufficient. Um,
Yeah, I was an instructor way before I was a rock climber. I used to teach gymnastics when I was very young, and then I taught tennis, and then I was a substitute teacher, thinking about getting my teaching credential. So I've always loved to teach. That's been something that's been really fun for me.
then maybe let's talk a little bit about your upbringings. What did you do before guiding, and what I read that you study international studies, and then did you play outside a lot during your childhood and all that?
Yeah, so I'm actually from North Dakota. So I played outside when the weather allowed. Um, it's actually changed a bit with climate change. It's a little bit warmer there now, but when I was a kid, I remember, snow, like we couldn't get our doors open sometimes because there was so much snow. But I played every sport you can imagine. I was in gymnastics, tennis, baseball, volleyball, basketball. I shot archery, figure skating, um, ran
Well,
some track. Yeah,
you have various interests. Yes.
I think I was looking for the one that was going to really inspire me. And I was good enough. Like I played varsity level basketball and tennis through high school, but I was never like the best at any of them and mostly never really felt passionately to try to be better. Like my dad would kind of get on me as a kid about you need to go practice your serve, and I was like, whatever, it's fine. And I remember when I finished college and called my dad and told him that I was going to move into my Subaru and go rock climbing for a little while, and he wasn't that excited about it.
Yeah, my mom wasn't excited about me living in a van.
Yeah, I think all of our parents have to go through this adjustment phase. but but uh but I told him, I said, Dad, I finally found it. I found the thing that I want to try to be good at this.
All right, so
And
then tell me why you chose rock climbing then. What was how was that first encounter, and then why you decide that was the thing?
well, apparently I learned later that I was always the one climbing everything all the time from like a very young age. I had two older brothers. I was always going higher in the trees than them and jumping further and um, dangling on the branches by my knees and stuff. And I think that part of it was just kind of maybe from my gymnastic history, that I just liked to move and explore what my body could do. But I didn't know people climbed rocks. I mean, that never occurred to me until I actually went to a climbing gym in college. And it was uh it's supposed to be a date, actually.
Hmm.
I met a guy who invited me to go to a slacklining competition. And he's like, "Oh,
Blackline.
there's gonna be
Okay.
a DJ and beer and whatever." Um, and it was at this gym, this climbing gym. And so I convinced my friend to go with me. We dressed up in like skinny jeans and high heels and had makeup on. And we showed up and we were like, huh, what? And so we took off our heels and we got some climbing shoes. And that was my debut into rock climbing.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, I was almost 21 in Portland and I was hooked. I mean, I think that next semester I was like blocking my classes so that I could have longer stretches off so I could go to Smith Rocks and I could go to Leavenworth and I could like just try to be a climber.
So you were in Portland, Oregon,
Yes.
for college. Okay.
Well, so I left North Dakota when I was 17 and I went and lived in Australia for a couple years. And then I went back for one semester to Moorhead, Minnesota, so that I could get state tuition, and then went to Spain on an exchange program.
Well, you
And
all over the place.
yeah, I did. I think traveling was kind of my thing before I got into climbing, and then climbing and traveling became my thing. The best of both worlds. Something to do when you go travel.
That's right.
So, but I finished school. I eventually ended up going down to Chile as well, and then graduating from Portland State.
I see. Wow. So you traveled to Australia, to Spain, but back then you didn't climb, right? Australia and Spain.
No, nope. I was just having fun being 19, 17,
I
18,
see.
19.
Yeah, but
Uh,
both of those places have good climbing.
I know I need to go. I did go back to Spain later in life, and I loved Spain so much.
Yeah,
I'm
I
looking
would
forward to
love
my
to
kid
go.
gets a little older so I can go back.
Right. And then so you travel, you love travel, and then you found rock climbing and you started
Yeah.
to schedule your classes so you have enough time to go outside climbing.
Yeah, it was like, well, should I take the class that makes sense for my degree, or should I take the one that's on Thursday night so that I can go out Friday and go climbing?
Nice. After you finish your program, your international study, did you do anything about that?
I never worked in my field. No,
Yeah, yeah, because you mentioned you start guiding at 26.
yeah, I think I finished when I was 23, and then moved into my Subaru for about a year, and I started off in Leavenworth, Washington, which is one of my favorite places. I was predominantly a boulderer, who
Oh,
had
hmm.
been sport climbing a little bit. I think I followed like a tiny bit of trad climbing, like single pitch trad climbing at Smith Rocks, but mostly bouldering.
Wow, that's
Um,
interesting because you have a lot of big wall ascents and traverse ascents and all those things. So I didn't imagine that you were predominantly boulder.
well, I went up to Squamish while I was living in Leavenworth,
Hmm.
and I was taking a rest day from bouldering, and this group of three guys came over and are like, "What are you doing tomorrow?" And I was like, "I was probably bouldering." And they're like, "Do you want to go do the Grand Wall with us?" And I was like,
Whoa,
"I guess, what's that?" And
nice.
they were like, "Well, don't worry, just we'll tell you what to bring." And they were literally yelling down at me like thumb down, like trying to teach me how to jam.
Nice.
So I give them mad props for getting me up it because I had no idea what I was doing. but they just wanted to be two parties of two instead of a party of three, and so I just
Okay.
followed my way up, and I got psyched. I was like, "Whoa, I need to get some of these things, learn how to put them in the rock. That's cool." But then I actually got pulled in Leavenworth, and I went down to Joshua Tree to learn how to trad climb.
Well, I mean, Leavenworth had track climbs too. Why didn't you learn it there?
Well, it snowed a bunch, so I was
Oh, okay,
living
I
there.
see.
It was the first time that I'd rented a place, and I was gonna just live in Leavenworth forever. I loved it there.
Mm-hmm.
But it got cold and snowy, and I couldn't go bouldering, but it wasn't snowy enough to be good at Stevens Pass. And so I was planning to just go down to Joshua Tree for like 6 weeks and then go back to Leavenworth. And I just got super hooked. And I had a bad injury, um,
Ooh.
bouldering, not trad climbing, bouldering,
Okay.
compound tib fib. So
Oh,
bone shot out, foot was sticking the wrong way. I think that was
oh
the
my
end of
God.
my high ball bouldering days.
Gee,
So
highball batteries. Scary.
yeah, yeah. Now I live in Bishop, and I'm like, ooh, those ones are high.
I know. I saw so many videos of people like highballing in beach. I was like terrified.
Yeah, yeah. I like sport climbing now. That's you can
Okay.
try hard and fall into space instead of the ground,
I
right?
know. Isn't rope so much safer? All right. So you got out of school. You kind of like maybe live frugally and just climb and travel a little bit.
Yeah, yep. I was definitely just like working to survive so that I could climb
Mm-hmm.
as much as possible for a couple of
I
years.
see. And then what happened? Like, because you eventually you got a job.
Yeah, so I ended up I was in Joshua Tree and had the bad fracture and wasn't going to be able to climb for a while. Met a
Mm-hmm.
boy who lived in Lone Pine, and so he convinced me to come out to the Eastern Sierra. Um, and I still remember the day waking up. He was living in Tuttle Creek Campground, which is like kind of in the Alabama hills, down in like the low desert. And it was March. And I remember waking up the first morning because I drove in that night. So I didn't see anything. And I looked up, and these gorgeous snow covered mountains with these huge rock walls just like glaring in the sun were it seemed like they were only minutes from me, from the
Right.
campsite. And I was just like, whoa, like my mind is blown. I'm sitting here in the sun in the desert, and there's these huge rock walls and these huge mountains all around. Like, this is paradise. And so I stayed in Lone Pine for about 10 years, and got a job as soon as I could walk again. I got a job up at the Whitney Portal store. It's a little like mom and pop burger shop at the trailhead of Mount Whitney. And I still remember I I was very determined. I mean, I hadn't walked, I think, in like 6 months. Like it was a pretty bad break. And I was about to start working up at that store. So I decided I was going to go do Whitney in a day.
Okay.
And I did. I think I made it to the top in I think like 5 hours or something.
Whoa.
And then
Okay.
on the way down, I got so many blisters because I was walking funny still
Mm-hmm.
that I just had these like oozing, puffing blisters on every toe. I think it took me 10 hours to get down. Like I had to stop constantly and put my feet in the water and rebandage myself, and it was rough. But I wanted to be able to tell the people at the store adequate information about the mountain. And so I vaguely remembered most of it through like the wincing on the way down.
Nice. So that trip is, obviously that you want to challenge yourself, and then also you want to collect information for your job.
Yes. Yes. So
Okay. Wow.
yeah,
Nice.
I worked at the Portal store for a couple years. The owners there are just amazing. They're such sweet people. Um, and my partner and I were able to get up and go rock climbing on the Whitney Portal butt trip, like at like 5, 6 in the morning, and then go down and take a shower and go to work at noon or 1 o'clock, and got to eat free burgers and lived behind the little store. And so it was kind of paradise for like somebody in the early 20s. And especially just because I was just learning how to trad climb and just learning how to do some first ascent stuff and big wall stuff. So it was like it was like my own personal Yosemite Valley, you know?
Right. Yeah, I mean it's beautiful there, right? The Eastern Sierras. And wow, so you spent 10 years there. Is that the majority of the big wall climbing and first ascent happened during that time?
Yeah. Yeah, I climbed there and in Patagonia handful of times. That was kind of my intro to that life. Um and honestly I enjoyed it. I kind of like suffering. There's something a little wrong with me. Um
Okay.
there's like a small amount that like is a part of me that likes to suffer and push myself and see what I can do. And then I kind of got older. And
Okay.
I was like, why am I doing this? Like, it's so much type 2 fun. Like, I want to have some type 1 fun. I've never even tried to see how hard I can climb. Like, I never climbed at a gym with a rope. I never really sport climbed anything that was, I mean, when you're in that kind of mindset of doing big wall first ascents and doing, alpine climbing and then guiding, you're in a very much like no fall territory. Like you're not,
Yeah.
your
Mm-hmm.
mind doesn't think you should fall. It doesn't seem like it's a good idea to fall, even when it's safe.
Mm.
Like I never got to where I could just let go and fall, even sport climbing. And I think it's just because I was, doing these like huge runouts that sometimes, I was going to take 40 footers if I fell. So I didn't want to do that.
Right.
So
And
I don't know.
also and also when you are in a remote region, taking a big fall, the risk is so much higher because rescue is far,
Oh yeah. And I mean,
right?
I never wanted, yeah. And I never wanted to be rescued either. I feel like
Of course not. Yeah.
self-sufficiency is, definitely high on my list of thoughts when I'm going out and doing something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's just kind of how climbing has evolved for me. Like I think I started out bouldering and then I got into doing some single pitch sport climbing and some single pitch trad climbing, and then eventually, I feel like this is everybody, right? Then started doing bigger things, and then doing first ascents, and then doing alpine stuff, and now I'm kind of transitioning back to being like, kind of just want to try hard now. I've never done that part. Never just gone and been like, I'm actually doing my first projects right now this year.
Mm.
Um, where I have a project and I have draws hanging on it because I'm like continually going back and trying to send it. And uh, it's hilarious because I'm with my son and laying there with him at night and thinking about the moves. Like, okay, I got to get my right hand here and my left foot there and clip. And like I've never done that before. So maybe in 10 more years I'll decide to ice climb or you know
Yeah.
get
And
into
and then
some other
mhm.
aspect of climbing.
Yeah, but you definitely invest, so I mean at least say 10 years of your time with those bigger objectives.
Yes.
Right. So, what were you thinking then? Like, why? I mean, were you were kind of single-minded, thinking that okay, the big objective was the thing that was the calling?
Yeah, I think part of it was the inspiration of like, I mean, have you been to Lone Pine?
Uh, Only once. Yeah.
Okay. I think of all the places in the Sierra that has like the most impressive skyline.
Mm,
Um, and to me, it was like, okay, I want to climb that one, and I want to climb that one, and I want to climb that one. And it was
I
like these
see.
little red lines, like going up on, you get back down after trying really, really hard and spending a bunch of time. And then my favorite part was always to just go try to free climb it once it was all established and done.
Mm.
And you get back down to town and you're sitting in your chair having a beer and you're like, all right, there's the little red line on that one. Check. Okay, what's next?
And
Um,
right now, then you transition back into like a performance climber, right? Like trying to send your project. Was there like any single incident? It's like, oh, I I think I'm gonna chase type 1 fun now, or is any something specific kind of triggered that?
Actually becoming a mom more than
Okay.
anything. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of what I have time for. Um, I haven't left my son for a night yet. I've been with him every night of his life. He's 20 months old, so just over a year and a half. Um, and I think that's probably changed my risk. I can say 100%. It's changed my risk tolerance. And so, when I'm going out and trying harder climbs that are a little steeper, the bolts are close together. And so I feel comfortable going out and trying really hard and being mentally engaged and physically engaged, even though it's something small, it's the 20-meter pitch or a 40-meter pitch or whatever. Um, I'm still getting that engagement that I want without the risk that I was putting myself in these other situations. And I can do it really fast. It's like, okay, I have a bunch of mom friends that are kind of in similar situations. It's like, all right, they drop the kids off at school. They come pick me up. We go out. We do 2 warm-up climbs. Get on the project twice. Time to go home. So I think that maybe has something to do with it too.
I see. I did remember that you mentioned Wednesday, right? Yeah, is that Wednesday? Yeah,
Yes.
Wednesday was
Yep.
your sport climbing day, right?
Yeah, normally it's Wednesdays. This Wednesday my husband had to work, but I get tomorrow instead. So, uh, been thinking about my project all week.
So you at least have like one day a week you're going to try hard.
Yeah, right now I've been really fortunate. My husband's schedule is really flexible. And I generally do a Wednesday and then a Saturday or Sunday. So I get 2 like sport climbing days. And then another thing I've never done in climbing before is train. And I've started to lift weights and like try to do the moon board a little bit and hang board
Hmm.
a little bit. Things that, were kind of seemed silly to me a while back, but now I get it. And so I'm trying to do some of those things. Like husband gets off work and I can run to the gym for an hour, or 2 hours and get a day of that as well. So
Okay, and then let's talk a little bit about your guiding then. Like, how much guiding do you do? Like, so from when you start, and then from when you were actively doing first ascent and long routes, and now being a mom.
I mean, when I first started guiding, it was my full-time job. Um, sometimes I was doing 2 Whitney trips back to back, like they were 4-day trips, and I would do one, get home, and basically take out the garbage food and put in the new food, and maybe wash clothes and go back out the next day. Um, I was doing that quite a bit. Sometimes I would have a couple days off, and then those were my play days, right? So you go
Hmm.
out and sleep up at 12,000 feet for 3 days, and then come back down, and then it's like, oh, but now it's my play day. So now I have to go into the mountains and go do these other things, and then the next day after those trips I go back to work. So I think, oh my gosh, thank God I was in my early 20s because I was beating myself up pretty good. But yeah, that was my full-time job. Not every day, but I was working, I mean, definitely weekly doing
Yeah,
trips.
and that's
Um,
after the general store, is that right?
yeah, yeah, I actually, I wasn't planning to be a guide. I was just rock climbing a lot, and one of the guide service owners uh, came into the Whitney Portal store and asked me if I wanted to guide, and I was like, huh, I guess I could try it. I don't know if I'm gonna like it though. In my mind, I was like, oh, trudging really slowly with a bunch of people that don't know what they're doing. I don't know about this. And then I went and I was like, whoa, I get to be the places I love being. I get to teach and I get to like give people an amazing experience that is maybe once in a lifetime for them. Or maybe get them hooked so that they're doing this all the time. And it was like, it was, it was empowering, you know,
Right.
to get to share that with people. So um yeah, so I think I worked at the Portal store about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and then was full-time guiding. And then when I opened my own guide service at first, I was still doing both. So I was doing the mountaineering trips and the guiding for other guide services. And then I was also running my own company, um, just on like a by by call basis. So if somebody called and said, "Hey, we want to go do this or we want to go do that," and then I kind of started building some return clients that I took them out climbing for the first time, and now they want to learn how to lead, and they want to learn how to lead belay and rappel, and now they want to do a multi-pitch. Now they want to do an alpine climb, and so that was really cool. The first couple of years, I was doing a lot of that. I was just kind of building up clients from the beginning, which is really nice because then you teach them how to do the things the way that you want them to. um,
Yeah.
and then
So,
constantly doing bigger objectives.
yeah, I think many guys, if they are, so they after they think they are serious about guiding, I think many of them want to open their own business. But obviously, in the States, permits and insurance usually is the crux. So back then, when you thinking about starting your own business, what was your thought process?
I mean, I was worried about putting a bunch of money in and not getting anything back. That's for sure. Um, the permitting took me a long time to get it all figured out. I mean, you have to submit not just like a permit application, but there's a lot of other things they ask for. Your emergency planning, your operational planning, just doing all of your bookkeeping. How do I accurately record things as just a business and not any personal, especially when my personal life and my business life are so closely connected. Figuring out what kind of tax situation, and then insurance, and what does the insurance actually cover, and liability forms, and there's a lot to it. And I think I was trying to think, it was 2016 was my first year. So I was 30. And kind of trying to figure that out without a lot of help. That's one thing I have learned, is that a lot of guide service owners don't want to help new guide service owners start a business,
Okay.
which makes sense because there's limited permitting in a lot of places, and there's some competition for clients and stuff like that. So I totally understand that, and big work to get it all in motion.
And what is your big motivation to have your own?
I think when I first started, it was that there wasn't another company offering what I wanted to offer in the Eastern Sierra. Most of the companies here were offering like a lot more of the backpacking trips and the mountaineering trips, not as much instructional classes and courses. And then none that I knew of at the time were offering women's specific courses. Maybe like maybe some women's backpacking courses back then. But there's been a change in that. And now there are a lot more places, a lot more guide services offering women specific courses. And I think now my motivation has been more just be fair to my employees and my friends. I'm very fortunate. A lot of the women that you've interviewed have worked for fifth class climbing school or Whitney
Hmm.
Base Camp. And they're my climbing partners. They're the people I have dinner with. Um, and so it's nice to be able to facilitate the permits and the insurance and the stuff that they need to guide and then pay them fairly um, for their input. Like Miranda Oakley, for instance, she was kind of coming up with her own programs and she was reaching out to people, getting clients for it. And so in my mind, she should be paid for that work. And so, it's nice to be able to facilitate programs that people are excited about offering and helping them make that happen through permitting and insurance stuff.
Did you rename the Whitney Base Camp to Fifth Class, or is it a totally new business but just inherent the permit?
No, I renamed it. Yeah, so Fifth Class Climbing School was actually kind of Paloma and Miranda had some input in that name. And it was just kind of the new Whitney Base Camp. We have some of the same permits, but are using them more widespread. And then some additional permits that I've gotten in the last few years, like Joshua Tree.
What triggered the name change then?
Well, I moved to Bishop for one, but um, I felt like Whitney Base Camp felt like it was only operating in the Whitney zone. And so I ended up getting, now I operate from Lone Pine up to Lee Vining, and then also some in the Joshua Tree area. And then I've also gotten Kings Canyon and Sequoia permits. So we operate over on the west side occasionally. And I even just got a Wyoming permit for some private clients that wanted to do a corporate retreat. So I got permits in Wyoming for a thing. So I thought that it was just more all-encompassing. And then fifth class just being like, mostly we rock climb, right? So second
Yeah,
class being hiking, third class being scrambling, like we want to rock climb.
right.
um,
But do you still have some mountaineering trip though, or? Uh,
yes, yep, we do.
okay.
Um, they're mostly like clients that have come to us for courses and then want to go do something in the mountains and like use those skills that they've learned. So, we taught them how to tie into the rope and to rappel and, a little bit of scrambling and some uh some trip planning skills, stuff like that.
I
And then
see.
like incorporating that into the trip so that they're like learning from that.
Mm-hmm.
Occasionally I get a call saying, hey, you guys have somebody that can take us on this? And it's like, well, yeah, I can look and see if we can find a guide for that. And if somebody's interested in it, then we'll do it. But we don't offer like pre-dated open classes for those kinds of things. I had a bit of an issue with that when I was guiding because I felt like a lot of times I know the cost is better with a group, but I felt like a lot of times like I could have gotten one client up
Mm-hmm.
something, but I couldn't get the other one. And you can only go as fast as the slowest person. So
Right.
I felt like sometimes I had to turn people around that maybe wouldn't have had to turn around otherwise if they had
Mm.
just done a private trip. And
And
that's frustrating, especially for
yes,
somebody who like puts this in their calendar a year in advance and it costs them a bunch of money and they're flying to Vegas and they're renting a hotel and they're driving out here and it's like it's a big deal.
yes. And you mentioned the Wyoming permit. Is that also first class, like rock climbing?
Yeah, so that was actually a corporate retreat.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and so we did some rigging, like big rappels, some Tyrolean, Zumaring. Um, we actually hired a helicopter to fly people up to a base camp, and then we summited a peak up there. And so it was more of like a team building experience
I see.
for their group. But Wyoming was a whole nother. I was happy that I had the experience getting the permits that I have, because Wyoming, I think I had to get 5 permits for that trip.
Because
It
you
was just
crossed the
crazy.
wilderness areas?
Yeah, just different. They weren't wilderness, but there was non-wilderness. There was state land. There was BLM state land. There was I don't even remember what they all were anymore. But
I see. Right.
yeah, just several days and days of paperwork.
Wow. There must be like you have to plan this way ahead of time, huh?
Oh my gosh, that was a lot of logistics. Yeah, these people
Hmm.
came from all over the world as well. Um, so it was good for me. It was a very cognitive uh trip planning experience.
Nice, nice job. Um, okay, since you mentioned about rigging, so I'm curious because on your website you also talk about rigging. Uh, uh,
Yeah,
yeah. So what kind of rigging work, and why do you provide that service? Because I'm just curious, and it's not that many guy service provide that.
right. Yeah, I kind of got into the TV world a little bit in Lone Pine. There's a lot of filming that happens there.
Oh,
And I was getting hired as a scout because I knew the area really well. And so then that kind of turned into I was doing some stunt work. And then it turned out that they actually needed me to rig things so that, you're a scout and then you're like, oh, well, we could get somebody on that. And they're like, well, how do you do that? And it's like, well, we would do this and this and this. And they're like, oh, well, you could do that. Um, so it just kind of organically happened. And then I got hired as a guide on the Bear Grylls show. Uh, when was that? A while back, 2017 or 18, maybe. They were working in Mammoth, and they were just trying to hire local guides to do like short roping of like their cameramen, stuff like that. And I did a few shows with them in the area, and then I started um, going with them, traveling with them, first in the country and then abroad, and eventually became their lead safety manager. And so I've done some IRATA training, and then a lot of in-house training. My boss for the Bear Grylls show was amazing. He taught me a lot about helicopter safety, about just big stunt rigging that I hadn't done before, and kind of what's expected of like commercial world versus recreational world, and the differences in what's like an acceptable anchor, what's an acceptable, 2 ropes instead of 1 rope for rappelling, 2 ropes instead of 1 rope for climbing up things. Um, yeah, stuff like that. So it was really fun. I haven't done that since having my son. Uh, it was usually about 2 week commitments or a little bit
okay.
more. So might get back into it here in the near future, but we'll see. Right now, I'm just enjoying my little boy too much.
Was having a kid in the plan originally, or it just kind of happened?
I think I always wanted to have a kid. Um, I grew up in a big family. I'm one of 5 kids, and I have 11 nieces and nephews. And I love kids. I actually used to run a kids climbing camp up in Truckee a couple weekends or a couple weeks every summer as well. And I just really like kids. I think they're interesting. I think it brings me back to, to my I don't know how to put it, my innate being, like as adults we kind of take ourselves seriously, and as a kid you just don't. You just do what you want to do, and it's funny and it's silly, or it's hard, or it's, scary, or whatever it is, and you don't think about it. And I think that I really like that about kids. Um and with my son, I mean, he just had his first gymnastics class this week. And I mean, I was the proudest mom in the world. He was like a year younger than everybody else, and he definitely didn't do all the things. But I was so proud of him. Like anytime he like tried hard, and I could just see his little mind, you know, the wheels spinning, and he was connecting with his teacher and running over and grabbing his hand because he wanted help. And it was just like I'm in my element in mom life. I love having my baby. As he gets older, I think I will get more into guiding again, maybe get into the rigging world again. But I feel like right now it's just, I mean, every day he's saying like 3 new words a day. It's crazy. And I'm pretty sure I have to potty train him soon because he's coming over to me and saying poop and grabbing my hand and taking me into his room to get cleaned, It's like, wow, how do you know how to do that?
Yeah, I definitely talk with a few guys and they have young kids or their kids have grown up, and definitely it's like they're life changing. It's very interesting, and of course they're all enjoying having their kids. And so I'm just curious about that part. Can you share with me a little bit more about the difference you have to make, and maybe like some future plan or whatever current plan has to be on hold or stuff like that?
Yeah. I mean, I think for professionally, I mean, it was really hard at first to guide because I was still pumping. Um, the first year, if you're not with the baby and they're still breastfeeding, then you have to stop and pump every so often, um, like every couple hours. And so even just a day of guiding would be, having to pump before I meet the clients and then hike in and, get them going and then have to kind of take a little lunch break and pump again. And I did it a couple times, and then I actually felt like I was kind of disservicing the clients by saying,
Mm.
"Hey, we need to take a break." And maybe I mean, I don't think they cared, but it felt like to me that um I could just hire somebody else to guide them and they wouldn't have to have those mandatory breaks. And it was just I was getting stressed about it. And when you're stressed, you don't produce milk.
Uh,
And I know a lot of women that can, and a lot of women that guide, and they just use one of the pumps that sit in your bra, and they'll just sit and instruct and do their thing, and they would be fine. But I wasn't one of them, and I had to like even just when I would go climbing for fun, I would have to like stop and like look at pictures of my baby or videos of my baby and just sit and do nothing and like eat and drink, and that was the only way that I could get any milk. So that was a little stressful for me. Definitely impacted work and just my own climbing. Um, I still remember the first time I had a really big fear of getting hurt right after I had my son and didn't want to take falls. Like it was um, almost almost just I don't even know what the word to say is. It was infuriating because I was top roping pretty hard right away. Like I lost all the weight within the first couple months and was able to top rope about as hard as I was climbing before I got pregnant.
mhm.
And then I would get on a route that was like way easier, like something like almost like something I would be guiding, like not even being worried about being belayed. And I would be terrified because the easier routes tend to have bassier bolts, as we know.
Yes.
And, and it's like, okay, but I'm doing like 12 plus. Like, why am I scared on a 10A? you know? Um, and it was really frustrating. And I still remember the first day I went climbing that I didn't have to pump was the first day that I like tried hard and was like in the moment and not thinking
Mm.
about falling. And I'm like pretty sure that those two things have a connection. Like I was being forced to stop and think about the well-being of my son throughout the day when I was climbing. And even, I mean, it was like, okay, if I pump now, then when we move to go to the other crag, then I won't have to pump over there. And so kind of all day thinking about it.
Mm.
Um, and so yeah, the first day he was a year old and I went climbing and I tried hard on something and I fell and I was like going for it. And it was the first time that had happened since before I was pregnant. And so that's been an interesting that risk tolerance thing changing. That's been a
Mm.
really interesting part of it for me. And sometimes I think it's good guiding wise, because I do have a lower risk tolerance than I used to. And I think that I see things, and maybe this is from spotting my son too, but I think I see things preemptively better than I used to, which is kind of interesting. Like, oh, there's that rock over there. If somebody steps on that, that could be bad. Or, oh, there's a potential for a swing here. Like, we need to make sure we take care of that with the directional or whatever it be. But I think that has actually been a positive part of it. Um, but I think in the long run, it just depends on each person. And for me, I'm only going to have one kid. Um, and I just kind of want to enjoy these couple years before he goes to preschool and savor them. And then once he's in school, I'm not going to see him that much, Like, in the reality is like you see your kid the most the first couple years, and then they're in school, and then they have friends, and then they have their own sports and activities and things they want to do, and then they leave. So I have a really good friend of mine who's she's a total badass. She's 55, and she has one son who's in high school and one who's in college. And so I've been talking to her about this stuff. She started climbing 513 in her 50s because
Ooh.
she was really busy being a mom until then. And she and I have been climbing together a lot, and she said, the more independence they have, the more independence you'll have.
Mm.
And I've been seeing that, like, just even in this last year and a half. I mean, 6 months ago, he was so much more dependent on me. And then 6 months before that, he was entirely dependent on me. And I've seen myself feel more and more comfortable, leaving him and just the fear factor. Like I'm back to trying hard and taking falls, and like it's just kind of naturally progressed simultaneously together. Both of our independence.
Oh, that's really interesting. And then so you can see that, okay, so as he grows more and more independent, well, you potentially see him less, then you potentially claim more of your own independence and your time back.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the way it goes. I think, it kind of it occurred to me, back in caveman days, like baby needed mama, like that's how the baby survived, with mom.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there was some aspect of that in developmentally, like that I'm not allowed to get hurt because there's a thing that needs me. Like,
Right.
if I break my leg, the cougars are gonna get my baby.
I see. So you own first class climbing, then say the pre-kid time, like before you had a kid, then
Hmm.
how much you do the administration work or how much you actually guide on in the field?
Before I had my son, before I worked for Bear Grylls as their lead safety guide, I was doing all the guiding work that came in, unless I couldn't handle doing it myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would hire somebody else, or if it was something that I wasn't comfortable with, like I'm not an alpine guide, so
Mm-hmm.
I hire under the scope of practice. We operate under the scope of practice of the AMGA, and so if it was something that I'm not qualified to do or didn't feel comfortable doing, then I would hire somebody else to do it. Um, and then I started working. It worked out well because I started working for Bear. a couple years before I got pregnant, like started working full time for him. And so I was gone about half the year. And I couldn't really schedule when I was going to be gone. And so that's
Mm-hmm.
when I really started hiring out all of the guiding work, so that I could be available to take that work when it came. And so I'd kind of set myself up with a handful of really awesome guides, that were kind of on the call list. And they were taking all the work for the last couple of years just because I was too unpredictable with the rigging work. Um, and so when I got pregnant, I was still working full time for the Bear Grylls show, and so it's just kind of continued as I had set it up the last few years prior. And I've done a little bit of guiding since having my son. We do yoga climbing retreats, women's yoga climbing retreats, and I really, really love those. Those are like probably my favorite thing to guide. And those are on the weekends and they're mostly local. So I'm able to actually help out with those, and then still come home at the end of the night.
The right now first class climbing, do you have like a set calendar that you do things, or is it more of like private guiding and people just see, oh, what type of courses you have, and then they register?
So we used to do a lot more scheduled classes. Um, and I've kind of veered away from those a little bit more. We do more private guiding, or just, people that will call and say, hey, we have a group, we want to come out and do this. I have uh, a few like women's groups that I work with where they, uh, they kind of come up with like backpacking ideas or climbing ideas, and they'll get women from their group who want to join them, and then we'll operate the trip for them. And so we do a couple of those throughout the year, and then we do we're up to about 5 yoga climbing retreats right now, that we do in a different location each one.
Mm-hmm.
So we do those, and then I've had, I've been guiding since with my own company for about 9 years, and so I've got quite a few repeat clients that come and do things on a yearly, or some of them like a couple times a year basis.
I see. And I know they also, because I talked to Miranda and Paloma, it seems like they probably have some, like, say, course ideas, and then they probably pitch to you, and then you can also add it on the calendar and put it on the website and stuff like that.
Yeah, so yeah, we do some guest guiding. So that's kind of what I was saying, like with my, being able to give the opportunity to my friends to guide what they want to guide. Like Miranda came up with, she wanted to do big wall courses and self-rescue courses. And I was like, okay, well, just let me know what dates, and, you kind of do the marketing and figure out, what your plan is, and then we'll go over it together. And then it's more of like a percentage pay rather than like a daily guiding rate.
I see.
Um, yeah. And Paloma's done a little bit of that, and a handful of other people that, um, I think it works out really well because I'm bad at marketing.
Right, at least you're very
Um,
good with all this logistics, right? Right? Like right now, when I think about permitting, I'm like already having a headache.
and that's why I really like doing the rigging work and like the TV work as well, is that I think logistics is kind of my jam. But Instagram is not. I had to teach Paloma had to teach me how to do a story.
I mean, that's good though, because if you have a team, then, somebody got to be good at different things, right? Not everybody's good at one thing. Then,
Right.
yeah.
Totally.
So you mentioned rigging also has a whole lot of logistics. Is that because I know the rope access world is a little bit more intense than, say, recreational climbing or guiding, because they just have more gear and all sorts of stuff. Is that what you meant by logistic work, or is just being moving around and all that?
Well, that's part of it. I mean, with the Bear Grylls show, it's all it's mostly like live. And so, what people don't think about is like, where's the camera guy? How did the camera guy get there? Yeah, so I just think that the rigging and filming is super interesting just because you have to think about where you're going to get the best shot. So when you see somebody on camera who is going down a rappel, but you're looking at them from above going down the rappel, that means there's a camera guy up there. And then that camera guy has to get down to the bottom of the rappel. And then the director has to go across the Tyrolean before the actor comes across the Tyrolean. And people have to get in and out of helicopters going from one location to the next. And it's all kind of linked together. So if you mess up one spot, then the next part of the show isn't going to work. So there's really a lot of important logistics that happen with it. And then as well as the scouting, when you first get to a location, I was just getting dropped off going, okay, you're in Crete, find us a show. And so you have to actually talk to locals and look at maps and figuring out where the probable places are to have interesting features and whose land it is, whether it's, is it government land, is it private land? What's the weather going to be like at this time of the year when we're going to be filming? Like all these different aspects of it, which make it really interesting. It's a little easier here in the Sierra because I know it so well. So when I get asked to do that stuff here, I'm like, oh, that place. But when you're just being dropped into the middle of a place you've never been before, it makes it you have to really rely on all of your sources that you can gather from the internet and from talking to people and from looking at maps and stuff like that. So
after you explain that, I can understand it's actually sound a very interesting, intelligent problem solving here. And I can relate, right? To, even I have a small group, then just like, where to go, what objectives I want to choose for my clients, and all those things, but obviously in a very smaller scale. But what's a little bit hard to relate. So like permitting, right? So when you apply for permits, this is seen as interesting.
No, it's not quite as interesting. But then I think guiding people and getting to really talk to them about their story and hear where they're coming from and why they want to learn these things and what their background is and those kinds of things I find more interesting. So, you get a little bit of both.
Right. Yeah. So I think when there are like people involved, right? Even like in filming, there's a lot of people you need to put them in the right place. So then the end product is good.
Right.
So that part is pretty interesting. So no, I'm just trying to steal some courage and wisdom from you. It's like, if I have to apply for my own permit, what can I do so that I can be more patient?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's just like now I feel like I'm mostly on autopilot. It does, every year is changing. There's different things about the permits that change and just, making sure that I'm operating under like the safest practices and stuff and kind of following some of that. But, once you get to where you have a certain amount of permits and you're constantly doing them on a regular basis, I think it gets easier. It's just the initial, it's kind of like seeing the pot of gold at the end of the tunnel, right? Like you have to, or at the end of the rainbow, you have to kind of put in the work initially, and then it does get easier. Or maybe it's like having a baby. The sleepless nights and the nursing and all the things, and then eventually it gets easier.
Oh, that's nice to know, right? So initially it's hard, right? So at the eventually you are gonna have your same goal.
Yes.
Yeah. And so what's your outlook? So now your son is 20 months old. So you're projecting sport climbing. Do you think that you will be projecting sport climbing for a while, or you might go back to, say, expedition and long route, or maybe you'll go back to bouldering, say?
I think I mean, like I said, I think I did my first project was this summer. Um, and I've been told that they're not really projects because they didn't take me very long. Um, but mini projects. So I've had two mini projects so far. But I I think that it's really enjoyable for me right now. So I kind of hope to do it for a while longer, as long as my body allows. And, eventually I think I would like to get back into the mountains a little bit. But as a parent, I don't want to put myself at risk. I don't want to be in dangerous situations. Um, I want to be around for for my son as he grows up. So as far as like doing, big wall expeditions to Patagonia, those are probably going to be out for me. Um, which is okay because I think I spent 42 days in a portaledge hanging on a couple
That's
towers down there.
yeah, that's pretty
And
good.
I think I got about 100 days in a portaledge total and quite a few sleeping on the side of not very comfortable locations and um so I think that part's kind of done for me. But I haven't climbed a lot of the classic routes in Yosemite, for instance.
Oh,
Um or even, Tuolumne. I mean, those are places that are super close by, and I was just kind of too busy putting up new stuff that I haven't done a lot of the classic stuff. Um and I think climbing a little bit harder grades because of the projecting gives me access to even more of the classics that I used to think were beyond my pay grade. So maybe that once I have a boy who's a little older and I can leave him for, you know, weeks here and there with the grandparents or with dad or whatever.
hmm
Um,
And how and
I
how
can
about going
maybe do
back
some
to
of that.
guiding and stuff?
Yeah, no, definitely. I kind of figure once he's in school. Right now, my husband and I have it worked out pretty well, but where like we haven't had anybody else taking care of him. It's just kind of been the two of us, and occasionally get like a grandparent to babysit once in a while, but they don't live near us, so it's just when they're visiting. Um, and so when I have time off right now, I just kind of want it for myself. Like I just want to
Mm,
go do my
right.
own climbing and take a I take 2 days away from a kind of full-time mom job, um where I go climbing from 8 to 3 or something, and I kind of need that at this stage. But once he's in school, I'm gonna have too much time on my hands, and and might need to start doing some yoga again and some book reading and some guiding and all the things that I haven't had a lot of time for right now.
Nice. Yeah.
I
Yeah,
do miss
any
guiding.
yeah. Oh yeah, so what do you miss
Yeah,
about it? Yeah.
I just miss the connection that I had with people, like especially some of the ladies that have come to my yoga climbing retreats, several times. Like some of them have come a couple times every year, and so I just kind of miss that connection. I miss seeing people really trying hard and kind of reaching their summits, whatever it is, like whether they lead their first sport climb or they do their first rappel or they email me later that they went and did a multi pitch or they joined a climbing gym or whatever it is. Like I love hearing that kind of feedback after guiding, and it's a special industry we're in. Like we get to help people like realize their dreams.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, in a sense, right? We climbers, I look at other people climb, I always want them to send. And then if not, just like, wow, they try really hard. You're really proud of them.
Yeah.
So like the
Yeah.
same thoughts to our clients too.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you so much for receiving my call for the interview when you have such a busy schedule. I know that you have a son and you also have your project days. But I'm so happy we've been playing scheduling for a long time and finally we have a chance to sit down and talk.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, and I appreciate what you're doing. I think it's really cool. I listen to a handful of your podcast, but I'm going to go back and listen to the rough now.